the university gates of the University of Nigeria. Nsukka stood tall and imposing, wrought iron painted green and white, the national colors. Behind them sprawled a campus that seemed to stretch endlessly, red brick buildings with modern glass facades, wide pathways lined with flowering trees. Students everywhere carrying books and backpacks, talking and laughing in clusters. Adanna stood at those gates on a humid September morning, her small bag clutched in one hand, her acceptance letter folded carefully in her pocket. She was 18 now, taller than she'd been at 12, her body finally filling out from years of Ngozi's extra food portions, and her own fierce determination to stay healthy. Her hair was still in cornrows, but now they were styled more elaborately, woven into an elegant pattern that Chidinma had insisted on doing for her the night before. She had left Uncle Okonkwo's house that morning with a send-off that would have seemed impossible 6 years ago. Mrs. Okonkwo had actually prepared a special breakfast, jollof rice and chicken, foods usually reserved for celebrations. She had even hugged Adanna, stiffly whispering, "Make us proud." Papa Chidi, no, Uncle Okonkwo, though in her heart he had become more father than uncle, had driven her himself, refusing to let the driver take her. In the car, he had been unusually quiet, and when they pulled up to university gates, he had turned to her with suspiciously bright eyes. "Your father," he had said, his voice rough with emotion, "would have been so proud of you, and your mother, Adanna, she's watching over you. I believe that with everything in me." Now, standing alone at the threshold of her new life, Adanna felt that truth settle into her bones. Her mother was watching. She could feel it in the warm breeze that touched her face, in the way the morning sunlight felt like a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I'm here, Mama," she whispered. "I made it." She took a deep breath and walked through the gates. The Faculty of Medicine was an imposing complex of buildings, lecture halls, laboratories, a teaching hospital with a sound of ambulances and hurrying feet created a constant backdrop of urgency and purpose. Adanna found the orientation hall where first-year medical students were gathering, and as she entered, she was struck by the sheer number of young people who looked like they belonged here in a way she still sometimes felt she didn't. Many of them came in groups, clearly from the same secondary schools or family connections. They wore expensive clothes, carried new laptops, spoke with the confident ease of people who had never doubted they would be here. Their parents were doctors, lawyers, politicians, business owners. Medicine was their birthright, their expected path. Adanna found a seat near the back, trying to make herself small and invisible, an old habit from her early days at Uncle Okonkwo's house that she hadn't fully shaken. "Is this seat taken?" a voice asked. Adanna looked up to see a young woman about her age, dark brown skin with a short natural afro, wearing simple jeans and t-shirt, carrying a worn backpack. Her smile was warm and genuine. "No, please sit," Adanna said. The young woman sat down with a sigh of relief. Thank God. Everyone else seemed to already have their friend groups. "I'm Kayamika, by the way, from Owerri. Adanna, from, well, originally from Anambra, but I've been living in Enugu. First time away from home?" Kayamika asked. Adanna hesitated. Home? What was home? The village where her mother died? The small room behind Uncle Okonkwo's mansion? The answer was more complicated than Kayamika could know. "Yes," she said simply. "First time. Me too. I'm terrified," Kayamika admitted with a laugh. "My parents are both teachers. I'm the first person in my family to go to university, and definitely the first to study medicine. Everyone back home is watching, expecting me to be some kind of miracle worker when I'm done. No pressure, right?" Something in Adanna's chest loosened. Here was someone who understood the weight of expectations, the responsibility of being the first, the one who carried hopes of an entire family, an entire community. "I understand," Adanna said quietly. "I lost my mother 6 years ago. She saved every naira she had so I could have an education. I'm here because of her sacrifice. So yes, I know about pressure." Kayamika's eyes widened, then softened with empathy. "I'm so sorry. But wow, you must be incredibly strong to have made it here despite that. I already know you're going to be an amazing doctor." Before Adanna could respond, a professor walked the front hall, and the room fell silent. "Welcome," the professor said, his voice carrying easily through the space. "To the Faculty of Medicine. You are the best of the best, chosen from thousands of applicants. But let me be very clear. Being here is just the beginning. Medical school will be the hardest thing most of you have ever done. The next 6 years will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. You will be pushed to your limits academically, physically, emotionally. Some of you will not make it to graduation." He paused, letting that sink in. "But for those who do, you will join the noblest profession in the world. You will hold lives in your hands. You will be the last hope for people in their darkest moments. You will be the reason families stay together. Children grow up, parents see their grandchildren. That is a responsibility you are accepting today. That is the calling you are answering." Adanna felt chills run down her spine. This was it. This was what her mother had died for. This was the promise she had made in that small room 6 years ago, holding her mother's cold hand. "Look to your left," the professor continued. "Now look to your right. Statistics say that 1 to 3 of you will not finish this program. Make sure that person is not you." Adanna looked left at Kayamika, who looked back with a nervous smile. Then she looked right at a young man with glasses who seemed equally anxious. She felt a fierce surge of determination. It would not be her. She had come too far, survived too much, promised too solemnly to fail now. The first semester was exactly as brutal as promised. The sheer volume of information they were expected to absorb was staggering. Anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, medical terminology, textbooks so thick and dense they felt like weapons. Adanna would sit in lectures, her hand cramping from taking notes, try to keep up as professors spoke rapid fire about cellular structures, chemical processes, systems and subsystems of the human body. She studied constantly, while other students went to parties, joined social clubs, explored the campus social life. Adanna was in the library. While they slept, she was reviewing flashcards by lamplight in her small dorm room. While they complained about the workload, she simply worked. Kayamika became her closest friend and study partner. They would quiz each other on anatomical terms, practice taking patient histories, share notes when one of them missed something in lecture. Kayamika came from poverty too, not as severe as Adanna's, but enough that she understood the stakes, the feeling that failure wasn't an option because there was no safety net to catch you. "My parents sold their land to send me here," Kayamika confided one night during a study session. "If I fail, they lose everything. That's not pressure, that's terror." "Then we won't fail," Adanna said firmly. "We'll make sure we both succeed." "Deal." "Deal." But not everyone was supportive. There was a group of students, mostly from wealthy families in Lagos and Abuja, who formed an exclusive clique. They studied together but refused to share notes with outsiders. They mocked students who couldn't afford the latest textbooks or who wore the same clothes repeatedly. Their unofficial leader was a young man named Chikwudi, handsome and arrogant, son of a prominent surgeon in Lagos. He took particular pleasure in making others feel small. One day in the anatomy lab, as students were partnered for a dissection practical, Chikwudi made a loud comment as Adanna struggled with identifying a particular nerve structure. "Maybe some people aren't cut out for medicine," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "If you can't handle basic anatomy, what will you do in surgery? Maybe you should consider nursing instead. Or just go back to whatever village you came from." The lab went quiet. Everyone looked at Adanna, waiting to see how she would react. She felt her face burn with humiliation and anger. For a moment, she was 12 years old again, standing in Mrs. Okonkwo's kitchen being told she was worthless. But she wasn't 12 anymore, and she wasn't powerless. Adanna looked up from the cadaver, met Chikwudi's smirking gaze, and said clearly, "I came from a village where my mother died because she couldn't afford medical care. That's why I'm here, to make sure no one else's mother has to die, because doctors are too busy looking down on people to actually help them. So no, I won't go back. I won't quit. And someday, I'll be a better doctor than you'll ever be, because I actually remember why medicine matters." The silence that followed was different now. Several students nodded. Kayamika squeezed her arm supportively. Even the teaching assistant supervisor in the lab looked impressed. Chakotay's smirk faded. He turned back to his own dissection without another word. After that day, something shifted. Students who had been intimidated by Chakotay's clique began to approach Adanna and Kayamika, asking to study together, forming their own group based not on wealth or connections, but on mutual support and shared determination. The midterm exams came in November like a storm. 3-hour written exams, practical exams where they had to identify anatomical structures, oral examinations where professors grilled them mercilessly. Adanna barely slept for 2 weeks, surviving on coffee and pure willpower. When the results were posted on the departmental notice board, a crowd gathered, pushing and shoving to see. Adanna waited at the back, her heart pounding. She had worked so hard. But what if it wasn't enough? What if she had overestimated herself? Adanna, Kayamika's voice cut through the crowd. She was jumping up and down, waving frantically. Adanna, get up here. Adanna pushed through the crowd until she could see the results sheet. She scanned down the list of names, searching for hers. There it was. Okafor, Adanna, first class. Rank, 3rd out of 150 students. 3rd out of 150 of the best students in the country. First class honors. She had done it. Her vision blurred with tears. She heard her mother's voice as clearly as if Obiageli were standing right beside her. You have a light inside you, Adanna, and I will not let it die in this place. I did it, Mama, she whispered. I'm doing it. Kayamika hugged her tightly, and they jumped together, laughing and crying at the same time. Around them, other students congratulated each other or consoled those who hadn't passed. Adanna looked through the crowd and saw Chakotay staring at the board, his face pale. She found his name. Chakotay Ease, 2nd class lower. Rank, 87th. He had passed, but barely, and it seemed to have shaken his arrogance considerably. Adanna didn't gloat. She simply walked past him and said quietly, "If you ever need help with anything, my study group meets every evening in the library. Everyone is welcome." He looked at her in surprise, then nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said, and there was no mockery in his voice this time. The years flowed by like a river, each one bringing new challenges, new growth, new transformations. Second year brought pathology and pharmacology, learning about diseases and the drugs used to treat them. Adanna excelled, her memory for detail serving her well as she memorized hundreds of medications, their uses, side effects, interactions. Third year was community medicine and public health, and this was where Adanna truly came alive. They visited rural clinics, saw firsthand how lack of resources, education, and access to care created preventable tragedies. She saw her mother's face in every sick woman who couldn't afford treatment, in every child with preventable disease, in every family destroyed by medical catastrophe. She wrote a research paper on improving maternal health care in rural communities that won a departmental award. She volunteered at free medical outreach programs on weekends, traveling to villages even more remote than her own childhood home, screening for diseases, teaching people about hygiene and nutrition, distributing free medications. "You're going to burn out," Kayamika warned her one evening, finding Adanna asleep over her textbooks at 2 a.m. "You can't save everyone, Adanna." "Maybe not everyone," Adanna replied, "but someone, I can save someone. And that someone is somebody's daughter, somebody's mother, somebody's sister. They matter. Every single one matters." 4th and 5th year brought clinical rotations, actually working in the teaching hospital, seeing real patients, making real diagnoses, performing real procedures under supervision. Surgery, internal medicine, pediatrics, obstetrics, and gynecology. Adanna rotated through all the departments, learning voraciously. It was during her obstetrics rotation that something broke open in her chest. She was assisting a delivery, a young woman, maybe 25, in labor with her first child. The pregnancy had been high risk, and the delivery was complicated. The woman was bleeding. The baby was in distress, and for a terrible moment, it seemed like they might lose them both. But the supervising obstetrician, Dr. Nwosu, moved with calm efficiency, giving orders, making split-second decisions, performing maneuvers that seemed like miracles. And 45 minutes later, a healthy baby girl cried her first breath, and the mother, exhausted but alive, held her child and wept with joy. Adanna stood in the corner of the delivery room, watching, and she was 12 years old again, holding her mother's cold hand, wishing desperately that someone could have saved her. "Are you all right?" Dr. Nwosu asked after the mother and baby were stable. "I want to do this," Adanna said, her voice fierce with certainty. "Obstetrics. I want to save mothers. I want to make sure no child has to watch their mother die from something preventable. This is what I'm meant to do." Dr. Nwosu smiled. "Then you found your calling. And from what I've seen, you'll be excellent at it." 6th year was a final stretch. Internship, preparation for final exams, application for residency programs. The pressure was immense, the exhaustion bone deep. Several of Adanna's classmates dropped out or failed, unable to sustain the relentless pace. But Adanna kept going. She thought of her mother every day, the sacrifices, the hopes, the promises. She thought of the cloth bag of money, saved kobo by kobo. She thought of Ngozi's kindness, Uncle Okonkwo's eventual support, even Mrs. Okonkwo's grudging acceptance. She thought of all the people who had helped her reach this point, and she refused to let them down. And she thought of the future mothers she would save, the children who wouldn't become orphans because she learned her skills well enough, worked hard enough, cared deeply enough. In May of her 6th year, the final examination results were posted. Adanna stood before the notice board, Kayamika beside her, both of them holding hands so tightly their fingers were white. Okafor, Adanna, first class honors. Overall rank, 2nd out of 150 students. Graduated with distinction. She had done it. 6 years of medical school, completed not just successfully but with excellence. She was Dr. Adanna Okafor now, a medical doctor, a physician. Kayamika screamed with joy. She had placed 5th overall, also with first-class honors. They hugged each other, crying and laughing. 2 girls from humble backgrounds who had dared to dream impossible dreams, and then made them real through sheer force of will. The graduation ceremony was held in the campus auditorium, a sea of green and white academic gowns, families in the audience cheering, cameras flashing. Adanna walked across the stage to receive her certificate, and the applause seemed to thunder in her ears. In the audience, Uncle Okonkwo stood and clapped harder than anyone, tears streaming down his face unashamedly. Beside him, Mrs. Okonkwo was also crying, though she tried to hide it. Chidinma, now a university student herself, waved frantically. Even Ifeoma and Chukwemeka had come home for the ceremony. And Ngozi, sweet, kind Ngozi who had fed her, protected her, encouraged her, sat in a place of honor that Uncle Okonkwo had reserved for her, weeping with pride. But in Adanna's mind, there was another seat, invisible to everyone else but so real to her. A seat where Obiageli sat, her mother's face no longer gaunt with illness, but radiant with joy and pride, smiling at her daughter with infinite love. "You did it." Adanna heard her mother's voice whisper. "You flew, just like I knew you would." The sun rose over the small clinic in Yamu's village, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Dr. Adanna Okafor, now 29 years old, stood outside the newly built structure, a modest but well-equipped medical clinic with 3 examination rooms, a small laboratory, a pharmacy stocked with essential medications, and a dedicated maternity ward. The sign above the door read, Obiageli Memorial Clinic, free health care for all. Adanna had spent the last 5 years working in a government hospital in Enugu, completing her residency in obstetrics and gynecology, becoming one of the youngest specialists in her field. She had saved money aggressively, lived simply, and applied for every grant and partnership she could find. And then, with funding from the government, support from international NGOs, and significant personal investment, she had built this, a clinic in her home village, the village where her mother died, where so many others had died from preventable causes simply because there was no medical facility nearby. The clinic had been open for 3 months now, and already they had delivered 15 healthy babies, treated hundreds of patients, and saved at least 3 lives that would have been lost if people had to travel hours to reach the nearest hospital. Adanna didn't work here alone. Kayamika had joined her after completing her own residency in internal medicine. Two nurses, a midwife, and a laboratory technician completed the staff. They worked long hours, but they also laughed together, celebrated victories together, grieved losses together. On this particular morning, Adanna stood outside watching the sunrise and thinking about the journey that had brought her here. From the scared 12-year-old crying over her mother's body to the confident doctor she was now, it seemed impossible, like a story someone else had lived. Dr. Adanna. One of the nurses called from inside. "We have a woman in labor. She's having complications." Adanna's moment of reflection ended instantly. She hurried inside, washing her hands thoroughly, putting on gloves, entering the maternity ward with a calm efficiency that had become second nature. The woman on the bed was young, maybe 19, and terrified. Her mother sat beside her, holding her hand, both of them looking at Adanna with desperate hope. "I'm Dr. Adanna," she said gently, sitting beside the bed. "Tell me what's happening." As the woman described her symptoms, Adanna listened carefully, examining her, checking the baby's heartbeat with the ultrasound machine they had managed to acquire. The situation was complicated. The baby was in a difficult position, and there was risk of hemorrhage. But this was what Adanna had trained for. This was why she had spent 6 years studying, 5 more years in residency, countless sleepless nights learning her craft. For this moment, for this mother, for this baby. "I'm going to help you," Adanna said firmly, looking the young woman directly in the eyes. "Both of you. I promise." 3 hours later, a healthy baby boy cried his first breath. The mother, exhausted but alive and well, held her son and wept with joy. Her own mother kissed Adanna's hands, blessing her in Igbo, thanking God for sending an angel to their village. Adanna stepped outside after ensuring both mother and baby were stable. The midday sun was bright, the village bustling with life. Children played in the dirt roads. Women walked the market with goods balanced on their heads. Men worked in the fields. Life continuing, persisting, thriving. She pulled out her phone and looked at the screensaver. A photo of her mother, the only picture that existed, faded but precious. She touched the image gently. "I kept my promise, Mama," she whispered. "I'm saving mothers. I'm making sure their children don't have to feel what I felt. I'm making sure your sacrifice meant something." "Dr. Adanna?" Kayamika appeared in the doorway. "Another patient is here. She says she's been having chest pains." Adanna pocketed her phone and smiled. "I'm coming." She walked back into the clinic, into her calling, into the purpose that had carried her through every hardship and every triumph. Behind her, if she had turned around, she might have seen what looked like a woman's figure in the shimmering heat, tall, proud, wearing a blue wrapper, watching her daughter with infinite love and pride before fading like morning mist under the sun. But Adanna didn't need to see to know her mother was there. She felt her presence every day, in every patient saved, in every life changed, in every promise kept. The national television studio in Lagos was bright with cameras and lights. Dr. Adanna Okafor, now 39 years old, sat across from the interviewer, poised and confident in a professional suit. Her hair was styled in elegant locks. Her face had matured into striking beauty, but her eyes still held that same fierce determination from her childhood. "Dr. Okafor," the interviewer said, "you've been named Nigerian Healthcare Innovator of the Year. You've established 15 clinics across rural Nigeria, trained hundreds of healthcare workers, and your maternal mortality reduction program has saved an estimated 2,000 lives in the past decade. How does it feel?" Adanna smiled. "It feels like I'm just getting started. For every mother we save, there are 10 more who need help. For every village with a clinic, there are 20 without one. The work is never done." "Tell us about your foundation, the Obiageli Foundation for Maternal Health." "I named it after my mother," Adanna said, her voice softening. "She died when I was 12 because she couldn't afford medical care. She spent her life saving money for my education instead of spending it on her own health. Her sacrifice gave me the opportunity to become a doctor. The foundation honors her by making sure other mothers don't have to make that impossible choice between their children's future and their own lives. You grew up in extreme poverty, lost your mother, were reportedly mistreated by family members, yet you persevered. What kept you going? Adanna was quiet for a moment, thinking of that small room with cracked cement walls, of scrubbing floors until her hands bled, of studying by candlelight until her eyes burned, of promises made to a dying mother. Love, she said finally. My mother's love gave me wings. And once you learn to fly, you can't go back to crawling. You have to keep soaring, not just for yourself, but for everyone who believed in you, who sacrificed for you, who needs you to succeed, so they can believe their own dreams are possible. The interviewer smiled. Beautiful. And I understand you have a daughter now. Adanna's face lit up with pure joy. Yes, Obiageli, named after my mother. She's 7 years old, brilliant and kind, and she already says she wants to be a doctor like her mama. The legacy continues. Yes, because that's what we do. We honor those who came before by lifting up those who come after. My mother lifted me. Now I lift others. And they will lift the next generation. That's how we change a world. One life, one sacrifice, one promise kept at a time. As the interview ended and cameras switched off, Adanna checked her phone. Messages from Kayamika, from Ngozi, from Uncle Okonkwo, who was now in his 70s but still attended every clinic opening. From Chidinma, now a successful lawyer. From dozens of people whose lives had touched hers over the years. And one message from her husband, Dr. Emeka, also a physician, reminding her that little Obiageli had a school recital that evening and they couldn't be late. Adanna smiled. She had a full life now. Marriage, motherhood, career, purpose. All the things that had seemed impossible in that dark, small room 27 years ago. She looked out the window of the studio at the Lagos skyline. Tall buildings reaching toward the sky. Millions of lives happening simultaneously. Each one a story. Each one a struggle. Each one a potential miracle. Thank you, Mama, she whispered. Thank you for teaching me to fly. Thank you for showing me that rain is not something to hide from, but something to dance in. Thank you for every sacrifice, every prayer, every moment of your love. And somewhere, in whatever place the dead go, Obiageli smiled. Your beginning doesn't determine your ending. Adanna started with nothing. Orphaned, abused, powerless. She ended as Dr. Okafor, saving lives and changing communities. Where you start is not where you must finish. Your circumstances are your starting point, not your destination. From Obiageli's desperate saving to Adanna's relentless studying, this story proves that education breaks chains. Knowledge cannot be taken from you. Skills cannot be stolen. Education is the one investment that always pays dividends, and the one gift no one can ever repossess. Ngozi's small kindnesses, Uncle Okonkwo's eventual support, Mrs. Ezen's belief, each act of compassion sent ripples through time. Now, 27 years later, thousands of people are alive because those individuals chose kindness. You never know whose life you're saving when you help one person. Adanna didn't just survive her mother's death. She transformed it into mission. Her pain became her purpose. Her loss became her calling. The very thing that broke her became the thing that made her unbreakable. Your wounds can become your wisdom. Your scars can become your strength. From never forgetting her mother's sacrifice to naming her clinic and daughter after Obiageli, Adanna lived in constant gratitude. Gratitude isn't just politeness, it's power. It keeps you humble, focused, and connected to the people and principles that matter. Those who remember where they came from never lose their way. Adanna could have become bitter, could have mistreated others the way she was mistreated, could have hoarded her success. Instead, she deliberately chose to break the cycle, building clinics, training others, giving freely. Healing generational trauma requires conscious choice to do differently than what was done to you. Dr. Okafor could have become a wealthy private physician serving only the rich. Instead, she chose free clinics in villages. She measured success not by her bank account, but by mothers saved, children born healthy, families kept together. Real legacy is what you keep for yourself, but what you give to others. Adanna's story continues, but now the question becomes, can she sustain this pace? Can she keep saving everyone without destroying herself? What happens when her own daughter asks why Mama is never home? What happens when a tragedy strikes that even her skills cannot prevent? How does a woman who has overcome everything handle the one thing she cannot control? And what about the next generation? Young Obiageli, named after her grandmother, is watching, learning, forming her own dreams. Will she choose medicine too? Or will she forge her own path? How do you live up to a mother who is a literal lifesaver, a legend, a symbol? The foundation is growing, but so is resistance. Corrupt officials demanding bribes. Pharmaceutical companies angry about free medicine distribution. Traditional healers threatened by modern medicine. Adanna has more enemies now than she ever did as a powerless child. How will she navigate these new battles? And in the shadows, an old enemy resurfaces. Mrs. Okonkwo, now elderly and ill, sends a message. She needs to see Adanna. She's dying, and she has something to confess. Something about Adanna's mother's death that was never told. Something that changes everything. The story continues. Because real life doesn't end with one victory. It's a series of battles, each one requiring the same courage, the same determination, the same refusal to quit that got you through the first ones. If Adanna's story touched your heart, here's what you can do. Honor a sacrifice someone sacrificed for you. A parent, teacher, mentor, friend. Find them or their memory and thank them. Write a letter, make a phone call, post a tribute. Let them know their sacrifice wasn't wasted. If they passed, honor them by living the life they enabled you to have. In Nigeria and across Africa, mothers still die from preventable causes. Donate to organizations working to change this. Comprehensive health centers in rural communities. Midwife training programs. Free prenatal care initiatives. Emergency transport systems for complicated deliveries. Even small donations to save lives. The cost of a fancy dinner could pay for a safe delivery that keeps a child from becoming an orphan. Mentor someone from a difficult background. You were once where someone else is now. Reach out. Tutor a struggling student. Sponsor school child's fees. Share your professional knowledge. Introduce someone to opportunities. Be their Ngozi, their Uncle Okonkwo, their Mrs. Ezen. You might be the only thing standing between them and giving up. Invest in education. Especially for girls, statistics prove that educating a girl changes not just her life, but her entire community. Support scholarship programs. Donate books to schools. Sponsor a girl's education through university. Pay it forward the way Obiageli tried to do for Adanna. Share this story, send it to the struggling student who's about to quit. Send it to the single mother working 3 jobs. Send it to the orphan child who thinks their life is over. Send it to anyone who needs to know that circumstances don't define destiny. Choices do. Stories have power. They plant seeds of possibility. You sharing this story might literally save someone's life by giving them hope when they had none. If you employ people, housekeepers, drivers, guards, nannies, actually see them, learn their stories, ask about their children's education, pay them fairly. Don't mistreat people just because you can. Remember, that house girl might be the next Dr. Okafor if someone gives her a chance. Document your own story. Your journey matters too. Write it down. Record it. Don't let your struggles and victories disappear without being witnessed. Future generations need to know that real people, not just characters and stories, overcome impossible odds. Your story might be exactly what someone needs to hear. Adanna built clinics. What will you build? Maybe not physical buildings, maybe a scholarship fund, a mentorship program, a community initiative, a family tradition of service. Legacy isn't what you leave for people. It's what you leave in people. Stop waiting for perfect conditions to pursue your dreams. Stop using hardship as an excuse. Yes, life is unfair. Yes, you've suffered. Yes, the system is rigged. Dance anyway. Study anyway. Build anyway. Love anyway. The rain will fall whether you dance or not. You might as well dance. Remember, someone is watching just like young Obiageli watches her mother. Someone is watching you. A younger sibling, a child, a student, a neighbor. They're learning what's possible by watching what you do. What are you teaching them? That life is too hard? Or that life is hard, but we rise anyway? 27 years ago, a 12-year-old girl stood in a small room with cracked cement walls and made a promise to her dead mother. That promise seemed impossible then. But impossibility is just another word for hasn't happened yet. Your impossible thing, whatever it is possible. Not easy, not quick, not guaranteed, but possible. Adanna studied by candlelight. You have electricity. Adanna had no internet. You're reading this on a device connected to all human knowledge. Adanna had no mentors in her field. You can find yours with a simple email. Adanna had every excuse to quit. What's yours? The rain will fall. It always does. But you can learn to dance in it. You can learn to let it wash you clean instead of letting it drown you. You can learn to see it not as punishment, but as the watering that makes you grow. Your mother, literal or metaphorical, made sacrifices. Honor them. Your community has needs. Fill them. Your future is uncertain. Build it anyway. Because somewhere right now, a young girl is crying over her mother's body, thinking her life is over. And maybe, just maybe, she'll hear this story. And maybe she'll decide to fly instead of fall. Maybe she'll become Dr. Someone incredible who saves thousands of lives. Maybe that girl is you. Maybe that girl is someone you know. Maybe that girl is someone who desperately needs you to share this story right. Where one story ends, countless others begin. But let's talk about what happened beyond Adanna. Because real transformation is never just about one person. It's about the cascade of change that flows from one courageous choice. Chidinma's story. Remember Chidinma, the spoiled 10-year-old who first offered Adanna a notebook? She became a human rights lawyer specializing in child labor and domestic servitude cases. Every child she rescues from abusive homes. She thinks of Adanna scrubbing floors at midnight. Every case she wins against families who exploit relatives as unpaid servants. She remembers the girl her mother mistreated. On her office wall hangs a framed quote, "Privilege becomes purpose when you use it to lift others." Below it, a photo of her and Adanna at Adanna's clinic opening. Both of them smiling. Both of them proof that people can change. That witnessing suffering can transform you from bystander to advocate. Chidinma now runs a foundation that provides legal services to domestic workers, helps them understand their rights, and prosecutes families who abuse them. Last year, she saved 43 children from situations like Adanna's. Ngozi's story. Ngozi, the cook who slipped Adanna extra food and words of encouragement, retired at 65. Adanna insisted on paying for her retirement, a small house in Ngozi's home village, a monthly stipend, full medical coverage for life. But more than that, Adanna hired Ngozi's daughter, granddaughter, and 2 nieces to work in her clinics, breaking the cycle of domestic servitude that had trapped the family for generations. Now, Ngozi spends her days teaching young women in her village about dignity, education, and refusing to accept mistreatment. She tells Adanna's story constantly, always ending with, "I knew that child was special. I knew if I kept her fed, kept her hoping, she would fly. And look, she flew, and she took my whole family with her." Uncle Okonkwo's story. After Adanna's graduation, something broke open in Okonkwo's chest. Guilt, pride, understanding, all mixed together. He started a scholarship program for orphan children in Anambra State, funding it personally. Every year, 10 children from poor families receive full scholarships from primary school to university. The only requirement, they must promise to help others once they succeed. He named it the Obiageli and Adanna Memorial Scholarship Program. When asked why he included Adanna's name when she was still alive, he said, "Because she died too, in a way. The scared, broken child who came to my house died. The woman who emerged is a different person, reborn through struggle. Both deaths deserve to be honored. Both lives deserve to be remembered." So far, 150 children have received scholarships. 12 have already graduated from university. 3 are doctors. 5 are engineers. 2 are teachers. All of them are changing their communities. Mrs. Okonkwo's story. This is the complicated one. The villain who was entirely a villain. The woman who caused so much pain, but who also, in her own twisted way, taught Adanna resilience. At 73, Mrs. Okonkwo lay in a hospital bed, cancer eating through her body. She had asked to see Adanna, not as a patient, but as, what? A confessor? A witness? A person she wronged who might offer forgiveness? Adanna came. Not quickly, not eagerly, but she came. I was cruel to you, Mrs. Okonkwo said without preamble, her voice weak but clear. I looked at you and saw everything I was taught to despise: poverty, village life, need. I was afraid of you. Afraid? Adanna asked, surprised. Afraid of what you represented. That someone with nothing could become something. That all my advantages, my education, my husband's money, my children's opportunities, might not matter as much as I believed. You were a threat to my worldview, so I tried to break you. She paused, breathing heavily. But you wouldn't break. And eventually, I had to face the truth. You were stronger than me, not because of what you had, but because of what you'd survived. I've lived my whole life afraid of being seen as less than. You lived yours proving that less than is an illusion. Why are you telling me this now? Adanna asked quietly. Because I'm dying, and I want you to know something. When I saw you on that stage, graduating with distinction, I felt two things. Shame for how I treated you and pride. Utterly irrational pride. As if I had anything to do with your success. But the truth is, I did contribute. I showed you what not to be. I showed you that money without compassion is poverty of a different kind. I showed you that cruelty diminishes the cruel person more than the victim. Mrs. Okonkwo reached out a trembling hand. I can't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know you taught me more than I ever taught you. You taught me that grace isn't something you're born with. It's something you choose over and over, even when people don't deserve it. Adanna looked at the hand, at this dying woman who had made her 12-year-old life a living nightmare. Every instinct screamed not to touch her, not to offer comfort to someone who had offered none. But then she thought of her mother, of Obiageli, who had forgiven the world for its unfairness, who had died without bitterness, who had taught Adanna that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Adanna took Mrs. Okonkwo's hand. I forgive you, she said simply. Not because you earned it, but because carrying hatred is too heavy. I've carried enough weight in my life. I'm putting this one down. Mrs. Okonkwo died 3 days later. At her funeral, Adanna gave a eulogy that shocked everyone. Mrs. Okonkwo was not an easy woman to love. She said honestly, she was not always kind. She did not always see people's worth beyond their social standing. But she was also a woman of her time, shaped by her own struggles and fears. And in the end, she was capable of growth, of reflection, of acknowledging harm done. That, too, is worth remembering. She paused. She taught me an important lesson, though not the one she intended, that how people treat you when you're powerless tells you who they really are, and how you respond to that treatment tells you who you really are. She showed me cruelty, and I chose compassion. She showed me judgment, and I chose grace. For that lesson, however painfully learned, I am grateful. Kayamika's story. Dr. Kayamika founded a medical school scholarship specifically for students from poor families. She remembered the terror of not being able to afford textbooks, the shame of wearing the same clothes repeatedly, the fear of failing because she couldn't afford a laptop. Now, 50 students each year receive full scholarships, tuition, books, housing, food, everything. The only requirements: maintain good grades and promise to serve in rural areas for at least 5 years after graduation. Adanna showed me that we rise together or not all. Kayamika explained at the scholarship launch. She could have competed with me, seen me as a threat. Instead, she studied with me, shared notes, lifted me up. Now we're doing the same for the next generation. That's how change happens. Not through individual excellence, but through collective elevation. Young Obiageli's story, the next generation. At 7 years old, little Obiageli Okafor already understood that her life was different from other children's. Her mother was famous, Dr. Adanna Okafor, featured on television, celebrated in newspapers, honored by the government. People stopped them on the street to thank her mother for saving a wife, a sister, a daughter. Everywhere they went, Obiageli saw her mother's impact, but she also saw the cost. The nights her mother came home exhausted, sometimes crying over a patient lost. The times her mother missed school events because of an emergency delivery. The weight her mother carried, visible in every line of her face. One evening, young Obiageli asked her mother a question. "Mama, why do you work so hard? We have enough money. Daddy's a doctor too. Why do you keep going to villages where people can't pay?" Adanna sat down with her daughter and pulled out the photograph. The only picture of Obiageli's namesake, the grandmother this little girl would never meet. "This is your grandmother," Adanna said. "She died because she was poor, because there was no doctor, because her life was considered less valuable than a rich person's life. Before she died, she gave me everything she had, money saved 1 naira at a time, and she made me promise to become someone, to fly." She pulled her daughter close. "I fly now, baby. And when I fly, I don't fly alone. I carry every mother who can't afford health care. I carry every child who might become an orphan. I carry your grandmother's dream. And someday, when you're older, you'll choose what to carry too. Not because you have to, but because you understand we're all connected. When one of us rises, we must reach back and pull others up with us." Young Obiageli thought about this. "Mama, I don't want to be a doctor." Adanna felt a moment of surprise, maybe disappointment. But she kept her face neutral. "What do you want to be?" "I want to build schools. In villages like where you came from. Because you said education is what saved you. So if I build schools, I can save lots of people. Like you save mothers, I'll save children's futures." Adanna's eyes filled with tears. Her daughter had understood. The specifics didn't matter. Doctor, teacher, engineer, builder. What mattered was a principle. Use whatever gifts you have to lift others. Then you'll build the best schools anyone has ever seen, Adanna said. And I'll be proud of you, just like your grandmother will be proud of both of us. On the 25th anniversary of her mother's death, Adanna returned to Yumu's village, not to the clinic. She was there almost weekly, but to the place where her mother was buried, under the mango tree in the village cemetery. The grave was well maintained now. Adanna paid someone to keep it clean, to plant flowers, to ensure the marker stone, beautiful granite engraved with Obiageli's name and dates, stayed polished. She sat on the ground beside the grave, not caring that her expensive professional clothes would get dusty. She sat the way she used to sit beside her mother's mat when Obiageli was sick, just being present, just being together. "Mama," she said aloud, "I've been thinking about something. When you were dying, you told me to fly. And I did. I flew so high, Mama. Higher than either of us imagined. But I've realized something. Flying isn't the end goal. It's the method." She traced her fingers over the engraved letters of her mother's name. "You didn't save money so I could escape poverty and forget where I came from. You saved money so I could escape poverty and then come back with knowledge, resources, power, and pull others out too. Flying matters, but what matters more is what you do once you're in the air. Do you keep flying alone? Or do you build a ladder for others to climb?" A warm breeze touched her face, and she smiled. "I built the ladder, Mama, and people are climbing. Chidinma climbs. Kayamaka climbs. Your scholarship students climb. My patients climb because they survive childbirth and raise their children, who go to school, who become something, who help others climb." She pulled out a letter, one she'd written to her mother years ago, but never found the right moment to leave. "I brought you something. It's a letter I wrote when I graduated medical school. I was going to leave it here then, but it didn't feel finished. Now it does. Now I understand what you were trying to teach me." She placed the letter on the grave, weighted down with a smooth stone. The letter read, "Dearest Mama, 25 years have passed since you left. 25 years since I held your hand and promised to fly. I kept that promise. But today I understand what you really asked of me. You didn't ask me to be extraordinary. You asked me to be useful. You didn't ask me to be rich. You asked me to be generous. You didn't ask me to be famous. You asked me to be faithful. Faithful to the values you taught me. Faithful to the people who helped me. Faithful to those who need help now. Flying is glorious, Mama, but the real glory is in teaching others to fly too. I'm not done yet. There are more clinics to build, more students to educate, more mothers to save, more children to keep from becoming orphans. The work continues. The promise continues. But I wanted you to know, I understand now. I understand that you weren't just saving money for my education. You were investing in a whole community's future. Every naira you saved has multiplied 1,000-fold. Every sacrifice you made echoes through every life I save, every person I educate, every family I keep together. You were never just my mother. You were a visionary who saw that one girl's education could change a village, a region, maybe even a nation. Thank you for seeing what I could become when all I saw was a scared child. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Thank you for showing me that love is measured not in words, but in sacrifice. I promise to keep flying. But more importantly, I promise to keep building ladders. Your daughter, forever Dr. Adanna Okafor. As Adanna sat by the grave, something extraordinary happened. A young girl, maybe 12 years old, approached hesitantly. She was thin, with sad eyes, wearing clothes that had been washed too many times and patched too often. She carried a worn school bag and looked like she'd been walking a long time. "Dr. Adanna?" she asked shyly. "Yes, child. What's your name?" "Neoma. I heard you sometimes come here. To your mother's grave. I wanted to meet you." "Why?" Neoma's eyes filled with tears. "My mother is sick. Very sick. We have no money for hospital. My father left us. We have nothing. I thought..." She swallowed hard. "I thought if I could meet you, maybe you could help. Or maybe just knowing you exist would help. Because if you could survive losing your mother and become a doctor, maybe I can survive too. Maybe I could become something too." Adanna felt time collapsing on itself. She was looking at herself, 12 years old, desperate and scared and hoping for a miracle. She stood up and took Neoma's hand. "Where is your mother now?" "At home. Too sick to walk." "Take me to her. Right now." 3 hours later, Neoma's mother was in Adanna's clinic, being treated for a severe infection that would have killed her within a week. But caught early enough, treated properly, she will recover fully. Neoma sat in the waiting area, crying with relief. When Adanna came out to tell her that her mother would live, the girl threw her arms around the doctor and sobbed. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Adanna held her. "Neoma, listen to me. Your mother is going to be fine. But I want you to promise me something. Anything. I want you to stay in school. Study hard. Don't give up, no matter how hard it gets. And someday, when you become someone, a doctor, teacher, nurse, whatever you choose, I want you to help the next scared girl who shows up with a sick mother and no money. Can you promise me that?" Neoma nodded fiercely. "I promise. I swear I promise." "Good." Adanna pulled out a card. "This is information about the Obiagili Scholarship Program. Apply when you finish secondary school. If you work hard, we'll make sure you get to university. All paid for. You just have to promise to use your education to help others." Neoma stared at the card like it was made of gold. "I'll work harder than anyone has ever worked. I promise." As Neoma left with her mother, now stable and walking, Adanna turned back toward the cemetery, and she could have sworn she heard her mother's voice, not in her imagination, but real, carried on the wind. Now you understand why I saved every naira. Not just for you. For her. For all of them. For every Neoma who needs an Adanna. For every generation that needs the one before to lift them up. Adanna smiled through her tears. "Yes, Mama, I understand. And I won't stop. Ever." Here's what the story is really about. It's about the truth that suffering is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your purpose. It's about the truth that one person's sacrifice can echo through generations if the recipient honors it by passing it forward. It's about the truth that you cannot heal yourself without healing others. That personal transformation without communal elevation is hollow success. It's about the truth that the measure of a life well lived is not what you achieve for yourself, but what you make possible for others. It's about the truth that love never dies. It transforms into legacy, into mission, into the work we do in honor of those who loved us. And most importantly, it's about the truth that you are somebody's Obiageli and somebody else's Adanna. You are simultaneously the one who sacrifices and the one who must make that sacrifice worthwhile. Someone came before you and struggled, so you could have what they didn't. Someone comes after you who needs you to struggle, so they can have what you do. That's the deal. That's the covenant. That's the way to reign and the joy of dancing in it. This is where the story stops being Adanna's and starts being yours. What's your version of this story? What suffering have you endured that can become someone else's salvation? What obstacles have you overcome that can become someone else's staircase? Who is your Obiageli? The person who sacrificed for you. Honor them today, not with words, with action, with choices, with the life you live and acknowledgement of their investment. Who is your Ngozi? The person who showed you kindness when they didn't have to. Thank them. Tell them they mattered. Let them know their compassion wasn't wasted. Who is your Adanna? The person watching you, learning from you, hoping you'll reach back and pull them up. Find them. Help them. Be for someone else what you wish someone had been for you. Because here's the secret that Adanna learned and Obiageli knew from the beginning. We don't rise alone. We rise together, or we don't rise at all. We don't fly solo. We build flocks. And we teach everyone we meet how to spread their wings. We don't escape the rain. We learn to dance in it. And then we teach that dance to everyone who's still hiding from the storm. Your mother, literal or metaphorical, gave you wings. Now fly. But never fly so high that you forget the ground where you learned to dream. Never fly so far that you can't find your way back to help the next dreamer take flight. And never, ever stop building ladders for those still learning to climb. Because that's what it means to be human. That's what it means to be alive. That's what it means to honor love and sacrifice in the sacred chain that connects every generation. Someone lifted you. Now lift someone else. That's not just a nice idea. That's your assignment. That's your purpose. That's your promise. Now go keep it. The end. The weight of rain is only unbearable if you forget that rain makes things grow. Endure the storm. Become the garden. Then teach others to bloom. Dr. Adanna Okafor, in a speech to graduating medical students, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. This story is complete, but the work it calls us to will never be complete. Every generation must answer the call anew. Every person must choose. Will I hoard my blessings or multiply them? Will I climb alone or build ladders? Will I curse the rain or learn to dance? May we all choose well. May we all honor our Obiagelis. May we all become someone's Adanna. May we all fly and teach others to fly with us. The end of this story is the beginning of yours. Write it well